Peace and love, y'all. It's your boy Ives, straight out of Anchorage, Alaska, representing Rock Force Crew, Frozen Flow, and Monster Energy. And today we are here for a creative artist talk. And the specific topic I want to get into today is a topic I've always wanted to talk about, which is 3 things you need to know if you want to be a full-time artist. And what that really means, right, is a crazy thing to say. But I feel like in the day and age we're living in, I just feel like a lot of more people are, trying to do that. And I feel like it's a normal thing to a lot of us now, you know what I mean? And when I say full-time artists, there's creators out there that create on specific platforms on social media and they make a living off just doing that, right? There's that kind of artistry and content creation. And there's also the lane that I'm in, right? And a specific niche, which is dance. And I just kind of want to share things that I feel like have been very helpful in how I was able to be brought up as a full-time artist. It doesn't happen overnight, it takes time, it takes patience, it takes a lot of courage to just say, all right, I'm all in. So y'all, hope you guys are ready. Grab a notepad or follow along in the best way you want to throughout this whole video, yeah? So let's get into it. 3 things you need to know if you want to be a full-time artist. Number 1, be realistic with yourself and the ones you love. Super important. Are you in a position to really be a full-time artist? Meaning, be realistic with how your life currently is. Are you working a full-time job? Do you not have a job? Are you willing to just drop everything and just go all in? You gotta be realistic with how your life currently is, right? Do you have savings for yourself to where if you need to support yourself when things don't go right, will you be okay? Like, if you have a plan and maybe that plan doesn't go well, you lose a little bit of money, your investment didn't go the right way, do you still have backup funds for yourself to be like, all right, that didn't work, but let's try something else because I'm good, I saved enough for this, you know what I mean? And if you have a full-time job, are you still able to do what you love to do at the level you want to do it at, right? My last full-time job was in 2022. I was working as a digital media specialist for a brewery here in Anchorage, Alaska. And I was doing that from 9 to 5 times a week, right? And I was still traveling internationally, and I was still working. And on top of work, I also was a dance studio owner. And after work, I would go to the dance studio. And after the dance studio, I would still have to make time for myself to train and do all the necessary things for me to feel good as a dancer. You know what I mean? So I did that for about a year. And looking back, was it hard? Absolutely. But for me to have done that full time and still travel and compete at different competitions around the world, I would have probably done it a little differently, right? But I wouldn't change anything about it because I was still able to travel. I was able to travel and work at the same time, meaning if I was traveling to another country, I would just have to work on my laptop and put in the hours that way, right? I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity when I had my job. But it's a lot because you want to be focused on what it is that you do, because for me, when I travel, I have to lock in and make sure that I'm ready for this competition, you know what I mean? But then I have to worry about checking my emails and checking in with my boss because my laptop's right there and I need to make sure that I'm still doing my job. So there's a lot of this and that when it comes to me looking back and working full-time and still trying to dance at a high level. It was definitely hard. But if you're able to do it, and if you feel okay with doing it just for, a little bit until you feel like, all right, I feel like where I'm at as an artist is is looking good right now. And if you're able to quit your job and continue on with your passion, while you had your job for a little bit and it was here to support you for your full-time thing as an artist, then by all means do that. I know a lot of people that still have full-time jobs and are still doing what they love to do at a high level. You know what I mean? And I have the utmost respect for those people, right? That was my experience. So this was in 2022 and I quit in 2023, right? But prior to that, I had other jobs that I worked, but I would say it was serious because I would say I was wanting to still let the world know that I'm still here and I still do this at a high level. So it was serious in that sense and where my mentality was at the time. And it was serious because I was still having to be financially stable at the same time. So there's a lot of things going on, you know what I mean? So when I finally made the jump to be like, look, I just want to do this all out, it just happened like that. You just had to say, you know what, I feel ready, this is it. There's not really a time for yourself to set yourself up, or maybe there is, but for me, it just happened, you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely be real with yourself in that sense. Like, do I need this job right now? And if the answer is yes, then cool, keep it for a bit, you know what I mean? But if you're able to maintain both, that's even better, right? Until you're able to support yourself just as an artist. And it might take time, right? So yeah, think about that. When you're being realistic with yourself, you have to also be real with the ones you love, right? Your family. Do you have a significant other? Do you have best friends? Do you have a close, tight circle that you should tell that you're going to do this? I want to do this full time. And if you tell them, see how they react, right? Do they support you? Because when you tell the ones you love, it's really going to show who's going to have your back and who has the utmost respect for your decision. I personally didn't do this, and I wish I did, because I feel like it would have saved a lot of time and energy with certain things that I did growing up that could have just saved time if I was just like, nah, that's not for me. If I was just real to begin with, you know what I mean? Like going to school after high school, going to college and things in that nature. Like if I would have just known off the bat, like I want to go in this route, and told my friends and family, then I would have saved a lot of time, energy, and money, but I didn't want to let anybody down. So it was a process. Like I said, this takes time. You can't rush this. But yeah, if you tell the people you love the most, your family, your friends, and you're really clear about it with them, I think it saves a lot of time and energy for sure. And it also, it makes it clear on who is there to help you when you need it. And I think that's so important, right? So yeah, I think with number one, be real with yourself and the ones you love. Yeah, I'll leave that as that. Moving on to number two, do you have a game plan? What does being a full-time artist look like to you? What artistry are you doing? What are you expressing? Is it dance? Is it painting? Is it online designing? Is it owning a clothing brand? What does that look like for you? And how will you work towards driving opportunities to eventually make income? For me, when I started dancing, I knew that this is something I want to do for a long time, right? But as you get older, you're like, okay, I want to do this, and I want to eventually try and use this as a vehicle to make income. And how can I do that? Aside from the talent you have alone, right? Obviously, the talent that you have, you might get hired here, you might get booked here. But aside from that lane, what else are you able to drive into your direction, right? Are you able to teach? Are you able to make connections? What does your networking and marketing look like? Are you able to start some kind of community where you are obviously the one that leads the community, but you're also giving value of some sort, whether that's on social media, whether that's a platform that you choose of your own, liking? Do you have credibility that people could just be like, oh, I know him, he is this, she is that? Like, do you have some kind of resume that you don't necessarily have to carry around, but do you have a social media? You don't necessarily have to have the highest followings, but do you have something presentable to where you could be like, this is what I do, if you're interested, hit me up. Simple as that. Obviously there's more work that goes into that, but at the end of the day, it's just that, right? This is what I do, this is what I can produce, this is what I could offer, this is my service, this is my rate. Hit me if you're interested. What does that look like for you? What does that process look like for you in building that whole infrastructure? You know what I mean? And that's very important, because traveling alone and competing isn't enough, right? You can travel, you could maybe win, place, get a couple $100s, but that's not enough. You want to have a credible name to where you're able to travel and you're like, hey, is there any way that I could set up a workshop here and maybe do a couple privates here? Or if there's another event that following weekend that you're wherever you're at in the place that you're in, can you work with that promoter to be like, hey, can you connect me with the guy that's throwing this event in order to, possibly have more opportunity to get a bang for my dollar on this trip, So there's those certain things. You can get creative, but those are the things you really got to think about. You know what I mean? And if you have a following, even better. There's no excuse for you to go out there and try your best to build a brand under who you are. You know what I mean? Build a brand off of just you yourself as a person. What can you do to be of service to people with the following you have is the question. If you don't have a following, I think that's exciting, because you have all these creative ventures in different lanes that you could really think about and how you could bring people together. And that takes hard work. And that's why, if this is what you want to do full time, these are the other things that come with it. It's not just your talent, here's money. It's what you can do to build aside from the talent that you have. For myself, I knew that giving back was something that was pretty natural to me. I loved organizing events, and that's another opportunity that you can do for yourself as an artist. Get your name out there. The more you throw events, people may come and they'll be like, hey, I have this event here. Would you guys be willing to perform or do something with that event? The collaborations that you can make throughout doing this. It's not easy. I come from a small town, very limited resources here. So when I tell you, you really have to make things happen for yourself, I feel like that's where you really experience it in Alaska, because there's nothing really that is handed to us as street dancers. When I say street dancers, I mean street art, breaking, hip hop, that whole realm. There's not really a infrastructure that you could come here and be like, oh wow, there's all this built already. So for 4 years we put our blood, sweat, and tears into what we could do into a studio, right? And we learned a lot from that. I feel like being in business is super important. So there's that too. Do you have a game plan, right? And one more thing about this topic of do you have a game plan is there someone who that is already doing this, that you can personally talk to, right? My upbringing as an artist, I feel like I was very fortunate enough to be around individuals that have been doing this since they were little kids, right? And they learn a lot in the business of building their brands and, networking and connecting with people around the world. So I was fortunate enough to have the mentorship under Rock Forest Crew, right? Shout out to one of my main mentors that have been there since day one when I got down in this crew in 2015 is Kareem. Shout out Kareem, an individual that is continuously inspiring me and is still doing this at a level where it's very impressive. You know what I mean? So individuals like that you can just hit up and be like, hey man, do you have any advice? I really want to continue to do this. You know what I mean? I'm all ears. Or if you don't have anybody that you could talk to, do you have people that you look up to at a certain level where you're like, man, I one day want to hopefully reach that kind of level, and if not, maybe a level of my own that I built throughout the lane that came natural to me. And are you studying that individual, right? Are there certain traits that you're picking up from that individual that you could take and translate into who you are and what works for you? You know what I mean? Just an example, I really was a fan of Kobe Bryant's work ethic. So what I did for years was just watch a lot of videos of him, motivational speeches, some documentaries on how we spoke and his passion and love towards the game. And I knew that if I was going to do what I do at a high level, there's certain things that needed to change in that sense, right? And I'll get to that in this third bullet that we're going to get into. But yeah, mentorship goes a long way while you are trying to be a full-time artist. Make sure you have people that are willing to be honest with you, right? You may not want to hear that truth, but if you trust them and you know that they're doing this at a level where you want to be at, then I think it's a no-brainer that you just connect with that individual. Or if you already have a connection with that person, even better. So important. All right, the last one, and this is probably the most important one in my opinion, is what are you willing to sacrifice, right? Meaning, if you have habits that you have, meaning like, all right, if you want to be a full-time artist, but you are out partying all day, or if you're out clubbing all day, and you're spending all your money on booze, drinks, and smokes and all that stuff, like, ask yourself if that really aligns with your goal as a full-time artist. You know what I mean? Your mentality needs to be on point. Mentality, so important. If things don't go your way as an artist, I think we create, right? So we got to be creative with switching up our game plan or being optimistic about the situation that is currently happening, you know? But everything that is supposed to happen for us is meant to happen regardless, right? Things are not going to work out. Things are not going to go as planned, right? They might. But there's always something that will come as an obstacle, as a roadblock that we got to be ready for. And as artists, I feel like those are opportunities for us to really sit down, think, and assess our game plan. Mentally, we got to be prepared for those things. And when things don't go our way, we got to be okay with that too, because everything is a learning lesson, right? And we got to be ready to get rejected, you know. We got to be ready to fail. But when we fail, I feel like that's when we learn the most, and that's when we elevate, is when we go through something like this as artists. You know what I mean? There's going to be downtimes, but without the downtimes, there is no uptimes. And without the uptimes, there is no downtimes. One must exist for the other to shine. You know what I mean? I heard a saying once, the same fire that can burn your house down is the same fire that could cook you a beautiful meal. You know what I mean? So be prepared for those things. They're normal. They're part of the journey. You know what I mean? Patience is important. We got to be patient. Like I said, I started dancing in 2007, and it wasn't till I graduated high school. It was about 2015, right? I graduated in 2014, but 2015 was when I wanted to, take this further, right? And that's when I was recruited into Rock Force Crew, and that's when I was fortunate to be around all these great individuals, right? So, yeah, from 2015 and so forth, I knew that I wanted to do this at a high level, which means things needed to change, like I said, to begin with, right? And through 2015 and so forth, you have to set yourself up to where you know that you're in this for the long run, right? And when you're okay with, the failures and the rejections and people saying no, and you know, maybe financially as an artist, you might lose a couple dollars, you might lose hundreds, thousands. But if you're in it for the long run, then you know that everything's gonna be all right, because this is all part of the building process. This is all for the better, for you to learn and, you know, be sharper and more wiser as you progress throughout the years of an artist, right? So from 2015 till now, which is 2026, 11 years later, I can say I have learned a lot, and I wouldn't have changed anything about my journey as a full-time artist. You know what I mean? But like I said, from 2015, through having to juggle different jobs and still travel and having to make enough money for me to travel, and, you know, ask individuals, hey, can you spot me on this trip? It might have to come down to that too, right? I had to beg my parents a handful of times for me to, Mom, can I please go on this trip? But that goes back to the support system you have, right? And I got to give a shout out to them, because without the position my parents put me in today, which is all the sacrifice that they put in and all the hard work they put in for me to live the life I am living today, I'm very fortunate. You know, we're not a millionaire family, we're not rich, but they set me and my brothers up to where we could build and sustain a life with what we really want to do in America. I was born and raised here, first generation. So the support system from them, it's like I owe the whole world to them. I really cannot thank them enough. Thank you, Mom and Dad. So yeah, so important, y'all. Get ready. This ride is long, but if you're really about it, if you're serious about it, you know, things will come. You know, all this hard work you're putting in doesn't just get thrown away in the universe. You know, the universe will recognize that, and good things will come if you're dedicated, if you're patient, and if you're willing to commit. And that's all it is. The last thing I'm gonna say is your circle might change. Circle of friends. Because if you're so invested in making something happen in terms of a transformation in your life, people may not resonate with that, right? But like I said, going back to the support system, it's just gonna show who's really there to help you and who really is just there to try and put you down. You never know, but you're gonna learn a lot about the circle of friends you're with throughout your artist journey, right? But I'm gonna leave it at this. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Being a full-time artist isn't about taking the biggest risk. It's about making the smartest risk, right? Don't confuse passion with a plan. Passion is what gets you started, but a plan is what keeps you going when things don't go your way. You know what I mean? There are gonna be moments where you question yourself, where opportunities don't come. People are gonna question you. Family's gonna question you. But that's normal. You know, every artist who's made it this far, they've all been there. If you're realistic with yourself, if you have a game plan, if you're willing to make the sacrifices, you give yourself a real probable chance to not just survive as an artist, but to build a life around what you love, man. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, right? Is make a living off of what we love. And it's not going to happen overnight. It might take years, but every step you take with intention will get you closer. I will tell you that. So don't chase this as just a fairy tale dream. Build a life that allows you to exist in that dream, you know? I appreciate you guys watching. I hope this helped in any way possible. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments. If you have anything you're going through as an artist or anything I may have missed in this video, please let me know. Are you trying to be a full-time artist? Are you thinking about it? Are you somewhere in between? I want to know, y'all. I will catch you at the next one. Peace.